The US President Donald Trump has just announced that the United States will reinstate a naval blockade of Iranian ports and impose a 20% charge on cargo transiting the Strait of Hormuz. It's the latest escalation in US-Israel war with Iran. But now, this isn't just a story about war. It's a reminder that some of the world's most important battlegrounds aren't on land, they're at sea, because a handful of narrow waterways keep the world's oil flowing, supply chains moving, and the global economy alive. And as the world grapples with the fallout of Strait of Hormuz, other choke points could pose even greater risk, because Hormuz isn't the only artery of global commerce. A handful of narrow waterways keep the world oil flowing, its supply chain moving, and its economies running. They carry the oil that fuels economies, the goods that fill store shelves, the semiconductors that power modern technology, and together they keep global trade alive. And today they are also emerging as world's newest geopolitical battlegrounds. So which are these strategic waterways? Why do they matter so much? And which one could become the next global flashpoint? Let's begin where the world is looking today. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage between Iran and Oman, just 39 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, yet every day around 20 to 21 million barrels of oil pass through it. That's almost 1/5 of global oil consumption. Think about that. One narrow waterway keeping the world's energy markets supplied. Today, that supply chain is under unprecedented pressure. The conflict involving Iran, Israel, and the US has transformed Hormuz into the world's most dangerous shipping lane. Tankers face growing risk, insurance premiums have surged, countries are rushing to diversify energy imports because there is no easy alternative. For Gulf producers, Hormuz is the only maritime gateway to the Arabian Sea. Disrupt Hormuz and the consequences travel far beyond the Middle East. Now move west. The next choke point is called al-Mandab, located between Yemen and Djibouti, only 32 kilometers across. Its importance lies in what comes next. Every vessel passing through al-Mandab enters the Red Sea, and from there the Suez Canal. Nearly 12% of global trade passes through this corridor. But over the last 2 years, this route has become increasingly dangerous. The Houthis have repeatedly attacked commercial vessels linked to Israel. As a result, many shipping companies have simply avoided the Red Sea altogether. Instead, they've chosen a far longer route around Africa. The result: longer delivery times, higher fuel costs, more expensive goods. At the northern end of the Red Sea lies one of the history's greatest engineering projects. The Suez Canal, opened in 1869, stretching nearly 193 kilometers across Egypt. The canal eliminates the need for ships to sail around Africa, saving almost 9,000 kilometers on the journey between Asia and Europe. Its importance became obvious in 2021. One container ship, the Ever Given, ran aground for 6 days. One vessel blocked one canal. Hundreds of ships waited. Global supply chains stalled. Billions of dollars in trade were delayed. It was a reminder that globalization depends on infrastructure that can sometimes be brought to a halt by single accident. Now we arrive at arguably the world's busiest maritime highway, the Strait of Malacca, situated between Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. At one point, it narrows to just 2.8 kilometers, yet around 23 million barrels of oil pass through it every day. More than Hormuz, nearly 40% of global trade uses this route. Almost 80% of China's imported oil passes through these waters. This marks Malacca one of the most strategically contested waterways on Earth, and recent developments have only intensified that competition. Earlier this year, Indonesia briefly floated the idea of imposing tolls on ships using the Strait of Malacca. Although the proposal was later softened, it highlighted the leverage geography can provide. At the same time, India is strengthening its presence nearby. New Delhi is constructing a multi-billion-dollar military base on Great Nicobar Island, placing Indian forces close to the eastern approaches of the strait. Then came another significant development. India and Indonesia finalized an agreement to jointly develop Sabang port, located on Indonesia's Ware Island. The deep water port overlooks the western entrance to Malacca. Together, Great Nicobar in the east, Sabang in the west, give India an unprecedented strategic presence around one of the world's most critical shipping lanes. And as uncertainty grows around the Strait of Hormuz, Malacca's importance will only increase. Now, let's cross the Pacific. The Panama Canal, completed in 1914, an engineering marvel connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Around 5% of global maritime trade moves through it. It carries roughly 40% of all US container traffic and more than 95% of American LPG exports to Asia. Today, the Panama Canal is once again becoming part of great power politics. US President Donald Trump has recently vowed that US would block any Chinese attempt to control the canal, calling its transfer to Panama in 1999 a strategic mistake. Whether or not that concern materializes, one thing is clear: Panama Canal is no longer just a commercial asset. It is increasingly becoming a geopolitical one. Look closely at a world map. These waterways appear almost insignificant, thin blue lines, tiny gaps between continents, but together they carry the lifeblood of the global economy. Oil, gas, food, cars, electronics, semiconductors, everything moves through them. That is why today's geopolitical rivalries are increasingly centered not on territory but on connectivity. The battle for influence is no longer confined to capitals. It is unfolding in straits, canals, and narrow sea lines. Hormuz has already shown the world what happens when choke point is thrown into crisis. In the 21st century, the shortest routes on the map may well decide the future of the global economy.